house is silent except for the hum of an old refrigerator. It's 11:58 p.m. in Compton, California. Angela Robinson, 48 years old, sits at a small kitchen table under a flickering light that barely reaches the corners of the room. 3 unopened bills lie in front of her, red stamps, final notices, words that feel like accusations, and 1 eviction notice, folded carefully, as if hiding it might soften its truth. Her teenage son, Marcus, stands in the doorway. He's wearing the same hoodie he's worn for 3 days. He doesn't say anything at first. He just watches his mother's hands, cracked, tired, still wearing her work uniform from the grocery store. Finally, he speaks, quietly. "Mom, are they going to turn the lights off again?" Angela looks at her hands. She wants to answer. She wants to say something that sounds like hope, but the words won't come. So she answers with silence. And in that silence, something breaks. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped meals so my children could eat. I gave everything I had, every single thing. And still, I failed them. My name is Angela Robinson, and this is the story of how money didn't just empty my wallet. It poisoned my family, tested my marriage, and forced me to choose between pride and survival. But it's also the story of how I learned that wisdom could save what money cannot buy. Let me take you back to where it all began. Not to the worst moment, no, that comes later, but to the day I realized I was losing control. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror getting ready for my first job of the day, home health aide. I'd been doing it for 6 years. Good work, honest work. But the kind of work that pays just enough to make you think you're surviving until you realize you're actually drowning in slow motion. I looked at myself in that mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, a new gray hair I didn't have the energy to pluck, and I thought, when did I become this tired? My husband, Jerome, was already gone. He left early for his shift at the warehouse. We used to wake up together, share coffee, and talk about our day. But somewhere along the way, we stopped talking. We started coexisting. Money does that. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly replaces conversation with tension. I grabbed my keys and kissed my daughter Shayla on the forehead. She was still sleeping, 16 years old and beautiful, and I left for Mrs. Patterson's house across town. Mrs. Patterson was 82, sweet as honey, and needed help with everything. Bathing, eating, taking her medications. I loved her like family. But I also knew that the $14 an hour I make taking care of her was supposed to cover rent, utilities, food, and everything else life demanded. Math never worked, but I told myself what I'd been telling myself for years. Just work harder, just do more. It'll be enough. It was never enough. The first real crack appeared on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the grocery store, my second job, mopping floors in the back aisles after my shift at Mrs. Patterson's. My feet hurt, my back hurts, everything hurt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jerome. They cut my hours, down to 30 a week, starting Monday. I stood there in that grocery store aisle, mop in hand, and I felt something inside me collapse. 30 hours. That was $200 less every week, $800 a month. Our rent was $1,450. Utilities were another $200. Food, gas, insurance, it all added up to more than we had. I didn't cry, I couldn't. I just kept mopping, moving the mop back and forth, like the rhythm might organize my thoughts. But my thoughts wouldn't be organized. They just screamed one question over and over. How am I going to keep this family together? That night, I came home late. The house was dark except for the blue glow of the TV in the living room. Jerome was on the couch, staring at some basketball game he wasn't really watching. I sat down next to him. "We need to talk," I said. He didn't look at me, just kept staring at that screen. "Jerome." "I know, Angela, I know. Do you? Because I don't think you do. Your hours have got cut. I'm already working 2 jobs. We're 3 months behind on rent. The electricity bill is overdue. Shayla needs new shoes. Marcus needs... I said I know. His voice cracked the air like a whip. The silence that followed was thick and ugly. He stood up, walked to the window, stared out at nothing. "You think I don't feel it?" he said quietly. "You think I don't know I'm failing?" I wanted to go to him. I wanted to hold him and tell him we'd figure it out, but I was too tired, too angry, too scared. "Love doesn't pay rent, Jerome." The words came out colder than I meant them, but they were true. He turned to look at me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never seen before. Defeat. Marcus stopped talking to me around that time. He was 14, all shoulders and silence, and he knew more than I wanted him to. He heard the arguments. He saw the bills. He understood that every time I said, "We'll be fine," I was lying. One morning, I found him in the kitchen before school, making his own breakfast. Cereal with water instead of milk. "Marcus, baby, why didn't you tell me we were out of milk?" He shrugged. Didn't look up. "It's fine, Ma." "It's not fine. I'll go get some after." "I said it's fine." He grabbed his bowl and walked out. That's when I knew. My son was learning to survive without me. Shayla was different. She was 16, emotional, and she wore her feelings on her face like a neon sign. She'd come home from school, slammed her door, and I'd hear her crying through the walls. I knocked once, twice. "Shayla, baby, can I come in?" "Go away." "Shayla." "I said go away." I stood there, hand on the doorknob, and I felt the distance between us grow. I used to know my children. I used to be the first person they came to. Now I was just the tired woman who worked all the time and couldn't fix anything. Money was being stolen from my family from the inside out. The worst part wasn't the bills. It wasn't the late nights or the empty fridge. The worst part was the shame. I'd see other mothers at Shayla's school, women in nice clothes, driving clean cars, laughing, and I'd feel this heat rise in my chest. Not anger, not jealousy, just shame. Shame that I couldn't give my kids what other kids had. Shame that I had to pick up double shifts while Jerome sat at home. Defeated. Shame that I'd worked my whole life and still ended up here, broke, exhausted, invisible. One night, Jerome's sister Denise called. "Angela, girl, you sound tired. You okay?" "I'm fine." "You sure?" "Because Jerome told me about the hours and..." I said, "I'm fine, Denise." I wasn't fine. But pride doesn't let you admit that. Pride makes you swallow the truth and smile through the pain. But pride also makes you blind. It was Denise who first suggested it. "Angela, you know my friend Crystal. She makes good money doing this online thing, selling products, building a team. She's making like $3,000 a month." I was folding laundry, phone pressed between my shoulder and ear. "What kind of products?" "Supplements, skincare, stuff like that. It's easy. You just post on Facebook, get people to buy, and you get a cut. You could do it from home." I paused. $3,000 a month. That would change everything. "I don't know, Denise. Sounds like one of those pyramids." "It's not a pyramid scheme, Angela. It's a business opportunity. Crystal's doing really good. You should talk to her." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either, because when you're drowning, even a lifeboat made of lies looks like hope. That night, I lay in bed next to Jerome, staring at the ceiling. He was asleep, or pretending to be. I thought about Crystal and her $3,000 a month. I thought about Mrs. Patterson and my $14 an hour. I thought about Marcus eating cereal with water and Shayla crying behind her locked door. And I thought about the eviction notice folded in my drawer. I could keep working myself to death, or I could try something different. But something in my gut told me this wasn't the answer. Still, desperation has a voice. And that night, it was louder than wisdom. I didn't join Crystal's business opportunity. Instead, I did what I always did. I worked harder. I picked up weekend shifts at the grocery store. I started doing overnight care for Mrs. Patterson's neighbor, Mr. Chen, an 80-year-old man recovering from a stroke. He paid me $50 a night, cash, under the table. It wasn't legal. It wasn't safe. but it was money. So I did it. I worked Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. with Mrs. Patterson. Then I'd drive straight to the grocery store, mop floors until 9 p.m. 3 nights a week, I'd drive to Mr. Chen's house and sleep, barely on his couch, ready to help him if he needed anything. I slept for 4 hours a night, maybe less. Jerome barely saw me. The kids barely saw me. But I told myself it was temporary, just until we caught up. Except caught up never came. It was Saturday night. I've just got home from Mr. Chen's. My whole body ached. I smelled like disinfectants and exhaustion. Jerome was in the kitchen, eating leftover chicken. "You look like hell," he said. "Thanks." "I'm serious, Angela. You can't keep doing this. What choice do I have? Maybe if you just do it." "Just what, Jerome? Just what?" He set down his fork, looked at me with those tired eyes. "Maybe if you just asked for help." I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Help? From whom? Your sister? My mama? They're broken too, Jerome. Everybody's broke. Everybody's struggling. So who exactly should I ask?" "You could ask me." "You?" The word came out sharper than I meant. "You can't even pay half the rent right now." The silence that followed was devastating. Jerome stood up, walked past me, and I heard the bedroom door close. I stood there in that kitchen, alone, and I realized something. I wasn't just fighting the bills anymore. I was fighting my husband, my kids, myself. Money had turned into a third presence in our home, poisoning every conversation, every glance, every moment, and I didn't know how to make it stop. Marcus got suspended from school. The call came while I was at Mrs. Patterson's, helping her with lunch. "Mrs. Robinson, this is Principal Hayes. Marcus was involved in a fight today. We need you to come pick him up." My hands went numb. "A fight? Marcus doesn't fight?" "Well, he did today, and it was serious. The other boy had to go to the nurse." I left Mrs. Patterson mid-shift. I drove to the school with my heart hammering in my chest. Marcus was sitting in the principal's office, head down, knuckles bruised. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't answer. Principal Hayes explained. Another kid made a comment about Marcus's shoes, old, worn-out sneakers with holes in the soles. Marcus snapped. "I'm suspending him for 3 days, Hayes said. He needs to understand that violence." "He needs new shoes," I interrupted. Hayes blinked. "Excuse me?" "He needs new shoes. That's what he needs. Not a lecture, not a suspension. He needs shoes that don't have holes in them, so kids don't make fun of him." I was crying. I didn't even realize it until I felt the tears on my face. Hayes softened. "Mrs. Robinson, I understand things are difficult, but no, you don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to work 2 jobs and still not be able to buy your son a pair of shoes. You don't understand what it's like to fail your children every single day." Marcus looked up at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'll never forget. Guilt. He felt guilty for needing shoes, for fighting, for making my life harder. My 14-year-old son felt guilty for existing. It was Shayla's teacher who told me. "Mrs. Robinson, can I speak with you for a moment?" I was at parent-teacher's night, exhausted trying to stay awake. "Shayla's been skipping lunch," Ms. Torres said gently, and when I asked her about it, she said she wasn't hungry. But I've been teaching long enough to know the difference between not hungry and no money for food. My stomach dropped. "She's been giving her lunch money to Marcus," Ms. Torres continued, "and she's been telling other kids that she's on a diet." I couldn't breathe. My daughter was starving herself so her brother could eat. That night, I confronted her. "Shayla, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're already stressed, Mom. You're already working all the time. I didn't want to make it worse." "Baby, you can't." "Yes, I can. Marcus needed more money than me. He's growing. He needs—" "You need to eat, Shayla. And you need to sleep, Mom. But you don't. So why should I eat when you don't even take care of yourself?" She was screaming, crying. And she was right. I had been so focused on surviving that I forgot to teach my children how to live. It happened on a Thursday night. I was at Mr. Chen's house, sitting on his couch, watching him sleep. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerome. "The electricity got shut off. I'm at a motel with the kids. I couldn't let them sleep in the dark." I read that message 3 times, and then I read it again. My family was in a motel because I couldn't pay the electric bill. I stood up, walked to Mr. Chen's bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. Hollow eyes, thin face, hands that shook even when I held them still. I had given everything, and it still wasn't enough. That's when something inside me shifted, not broke, shifted. Because I realized something in that moment. Working harder wasn't the answer. Sacrificing more wasn't the answer. The answer was wisdom. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I sat in Mr. Chen's kitchen, made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink, and I did something I hadn't done in months. I thought, not panicked, not reacted, just thought. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I looked at every transaction from the last 3 months, every dollar in, every dollar out, and I saw the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't failing because I didn't work hard enough. I was failing because I didn't have a plan. I was pouring water into a bucket with holes in it, and instead of fixing the holes, I was just pouring faster. The next day, I called in sick to both jobs. It was the first time in 6 years I'd taken a day off that wasn't an emergency. I went to the public library in downtown Compton, sat at one of those old computers, and I started researching. Not get-rich-quick schemes, not miracle solutions. I researched the basics, the things no one talks about because they're not exciting. Budgeting, emergency funds, insurance, financial protection. I learned about something called a zero-based budget, where every dollar has a job before you spend it. I learned about insurance, not just car insurance or health insurance, but life insurance, disability insurance, things that protect you when the worst happens. I learned about grace periods on bills, about payment plans, about community resources I didn't even know existed. For 8 hours, I sat in that library taking notes in a dollar store notebook, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate lottery ticket kind of hope. Real hope. The kind is built on knowledge and strategy. That night, I came home to the motel room where Jerome and the kids were staying. "We need to talk," I said. Jerome looked up from the TV, guarded, tired. "About what?" "About how we're going to survive this." I sat down. I pulled out my notebook. "I've been doing this all wrong," I said. "I thought if I just worked harder, we'd make it. But that's not how it works." "Angela, let me finish. Please." He nodded. "I made a list of every bill we have, every expense, every dollar comes in. And I did the math, Jerome. Real math. Not hopeful math." I showed him the numbers. "We're spending $2,800 a month. We're bringing in $2,400. That's why we're drowning. Not because we're lazy or unlucky, because math doesn't work." Jerome looked at the notebook, then at me. "So, what do? We fix the holes. We cut what we can. We find cheaper rent. We apply for assistance programs I didn't know existed. We get food stamps. Yes, food stamps, Jerome. I know we didn't want to, but our kids are skipping lunch, so pride isn't an option anymore." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "And we protect what little we have," I continued. "Life insurance, disability insurance, things that make sure if something happens to me or you, the kids aren't left with nothing. Insurance costs money, Angela. So does dying broke. So does getting sick and losing everything. I'd rather spend $50 a month on protection than lose $5,000 because we had none." Jerome was quiet for a long time. Then he said the words I needed to hear. "Okay, let's do it. Let's try your way." We started small. Jerome and I sat down with the kids that weekend. No more secrets. No more pretending everything was fine. "We're struggling," I told them, "and I'm sorry I tried to hide it from you, but we're going to fix this. Together." Marcus and Shayla were quiet. Then Marcus asked, "What do you need us to do?" And just like that, my son, who'd been so angry, so distant, was ready to help. We made a family budget. Everyone got a say. We cut the streaming services. We switched to a cheaper phone plan. We started buying generic brands at the grocery store. It felt like giving up luxuries, but it also felt like taking control. We moved. It was the hardest decision I ever made. Leaving that house, where Marcus took his first steps, where Shayla learned to ride a bike, it felt like admitting defeat. But the new place was $900 a month instead of $1,450. That extra $550 changed everything. We applied for food assistance. I swallowed my pride, walked into that county office, and I filled out the forms. When the EBT card came in the mail, I cried. Not from shame, from relief, because my kids could eat. I met with an insurance advisor at a community center, a woman named Linda, probably in her 60s, who'd been helping low-income families for years. "Let me be honest with you, Angela," she said. "Insurance isn't a magic fix. It's not going to make you rich, but it will protect you from being destroyed." She explained life insurance, a small policy that would cover my funeral costs and leave something for the kids if I died. She explained disability insurance, income replacement if I got too sick to work. She explained critical illness coverage, money that would come if I got diagnosed with cancer or had a heart attack, things that could wipe us out financially. None of it was expensive. $40 here, $25 there, small amounts that added up to protection. "Think of it like this," Linda said. "You're building a safety net, not a trampoline, a net. So, when life pushes you, you don't hit the ground." I signed up that day, not because I was planning to die, but because I was planning to live. It didn't happen overnight. But slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice, things started to stabilize. The electricity stayed on. The fridge had food, the kids had school supplies. Jerome found a second job doing security at a mall. It wasn't much, but it helped. I kept working at Mrs. Patterson's, but I quit the grocery store. I realized that killing myself wasn't noble. It was stupid. We weren't rich. We weren't even comfortable. But we were breathing. And that was enough. One night, about 6 months after the electricity got off, I was sitting at the kitchen table in our new apartment. Shayla was doing homework. Marcus was playing video games on an old console Jerome found at a thrift store. Jerome was reading the newspaper. It was quiet, normal, boring, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. Shayla looked up. "Mom? Yeah, baby. Are we going to be okay?" I thought about lying, about saying yes with false confidence. Instead, I told her the truth. "I don't know what's coming, Shayla, but I know we have a plan. I know we're protected. I know we're honest with each other, and I know that even when money runs out, love doesn't. So yeah, I think we're going to be okay." She smiled. Then I went back to her homework. And at that moment, I understood something. Money doesn't define a parent's worth, but wisdom protects a family's future. If you're watching this video, I need you to hear me. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped meals. I gave everything I had, and I still failed. But failing taught me something successful never could. It taught me that sacrifice without strategy is just suffering. It taught me that love without planning is just hope. It taught me that working hard is not enough if you're working without wisdom. My family didn't survive because I worked harder. We survived because I finally learned to work smarter. We survived because I built a safety net before we fell. We survived because I stopped letting pride kill us and started letting honesty save us. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still losing, if you've ever worked 2 jobs and still couldn't pay the bills, if you've ever looked at your children and felt like you were failing them, You're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just learning the same lesson I learned. Money will test you. It will test your marriage, your kids, your faith. But wisdom can save what money cannot buy. So here's what I want you to do. Take a breath, sit down, and make a plan. Not a perfect plan, just a plan. Budget your money. Protect your family. Ask for help when you need it. And remember, you are not defined by what you lack. You are defined by what you learn. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, share your own story in the comments. Tell me where you're from. Tell me what you're facing. Tell me how you survive. Because your story matters too. And if this helps you, please subscribe. I'll be sharing more real-life stories like these stories of struggle, wisdom, and hope. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you are stronger than you know.